What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Weeds Weekly Wrap. Yes, I'm sitting outside. It's a little bit noisy. I am on a corner, but I am on the go today, so this is the way it's going to roll. So, yes, this is where we cover what happened this past week. We anticipate this week. We get into some random thoughts. Do we think the Fed is data-driven or political? We're going to talk about a pushback, and then we're going to talk about focusing on their why. So let's just dive right in. And my apologies once again. Yes, it is Tuesday, not Monday. But my excuse is it was the Derby and Cinco de Mayo. I think those are great excuses. So let's just tear into what happened last week. And the biggest thing that we saw is finally, the Fed came out in their statement with regards to where interest rates are, and they talked about inflation being persistent. It was really the first time that the Fed alluded to, hey, they're still well off from their 2% target. They still have a long way to go, and it's a nagging thing that's out there, and it doesn't look like it's going to be corrected anytime soon. So it was great to see that the Fed is going to do that. Here's what I anticipate is going to happen with them is the 2% target, I think, is far-fetched. They are not going to get there. They're going to actually increase that, and that's going to be, hey, it's now going to become 2.5% that they're going to be settled with. They're going to be fine with. Talks of 2% will still be out there, but that's going to be the general theory. All right, so the big thing that came out of this past week was also a swing and a miss. You know, you look at what happened with non-farm payroll. So it was the first time in months that jobs showed a kink in the armor. And that's a great thing for interest rates. It's not a great thing for the overall economy, but make no mistake about it, it's naturally going to happen. And maybe, just maybe, we're finally starting to see what the Fed monetary policy has been, slipping into what is now the job market. We're going to see consumer sentiment start pulling back, in my opinion. So those are going to be things that are natural, progressively going to happen. But what it did is it took us from 4.7%, which was kind of the ceiling that we've ridden up to on the 10-year Treasury, and we closed the week with Friday's jobs report below 4.5%, which was fantastic for interest rates. Interest rates dropped anywhere from 1/8 to 3/8, depending on your credit score, depending on the loan program you wanted to. But the fact that we got reprieve in interest rates was a great thing as we headed into the weekend, right? We'll take it. And it put us back to early April. If you recall, in early April, it seemed like we had some good traction in the real estate market. It looked like there was a lot more activity out there, and I think that was a great thing. And then we saw rates spike all the way back up into the 7s specifically, and we're starting to see that come back down. So let's hope that that continues. As far as what's going on with the week ahead, the other thing we saw too, let me just backtrack really quick last week, is we had both manufacturing and services, as far as the sentiment, show below 50%. Obviously 50%, anything above looks like it's going to be a growth. Manufacturers and service people think that we are in growth mode. This was another thing that looks like it's on the pullback. So again, as we head into May, we're starting to see that the Fed monetary policy maybe is really starting to pan out. And I think a lot of it is driven due to the consumer. That's my biggest take. So what do I think is going to happen this week? It is a slow week for data. There is not major data points out there. As a matter of fact, they're far and few between. We're going to get some more jobs numbers, initial jobless claims and stuff like that. To me, the biggest thing this week as far as what we're going to see is we have Michigan consumer sentiment comes out. And again, I've been saying it since the beginning of the year, and I thought it would be happening sooner than this, but the consumer has to pull back. You have credit card debt at all-time highs. You have food prices that continue to increase. For the average family, it is a rough go. So, although jobs were good and paychecks were coming and we saw increases in wages, we just saw in this jobs report all that's starting to correct itself. So what do I think is people are going to sit back this week, especially traders, economists, and they're going to digest that data. So often data comes out at us so quickly that it's reactionary, right? That jobs number missed forecast, boom, we saw the 10-year Treasury market drop and therefore interest rates drop. But that's not always the case, right? Once you start diving into that jobs report, you're going to be able to analyze a little bit more. And I think that's what's going to happen this week is a lot of traders are going to break down all the recent data. They're going to calculate a new way to look at the inflationary numbers coming next week, which are huge, CPI on Tuesday, so heads up. And I think it's going to give a good little pause. So I think that rates are going to drop towards the beginning of the week. And we already saw that, right? We see the 10-year Treasury coming down since I'm coming to you on Tuesday. And then as we head into the weekend, depending on that consumer sentiment number, and, we do have Fed chairs talking and so on and so forth, I think you're going to see rates tick up a little bit. I think you're going to see traders hedge on the fact that we might get a high inflationary number, so they just want to be cautious. So now we're going to dive a little bit into what are my thoughts. So, what was I going to say here? So there's been recent banter by a lot of people, and as a matter of fact, this past week, a lot of people are anticipating that the Fed is going to make a cut. There are 3 more Fed meetings, policy meetings, before the election, which is kind of crazy, right? We have one coming up in June, we have a July, and then we have a September. That allows the Fed 3 times prior to the election to make a cut. And I'm here to tell you right now, as much as the question actually came up at the Fed meeting this past week, they actually asked Powell, hey, do you think that you could be politically driven to lower interest rates? And of course, he gave the standard answer, right? The Fed, at all costs, should not be political. However, it's my personal opinion, and unfortunately in today's market, right, I believe that all branches of government at some level are political in nature. So I'm here to tell you that we are going to get a rate cut prior to the election, and I'm telling you it's coming in September. Do I think it's going to have a big impact on interest rates? I don't think it's going to have a crazy impact, because I think we're already going to see it. I think coming now May, I think as you head into June, I think as you head into July, I think you're going to see consumer spending, consumer sentiment pull way back. I think you're going to see jobs start to decrease. I think we already have inflation. Inflation's going to be, down the road, we're going to see that start to pull back, and we're going to kind of quasi move into a stagflation, and we're already going to see rates dropping, because the anticipation that the Fed's going to make that cut is what's going to propel that. The other thing I wanted to touch on real quick is, make no mistake about it, right? Anytime the government gets involved in anything, costs go up, and it takes longer than anticipated, which is clearly why the NAR settlement has now been pushed into August. It was anticipated it was going to be July. Everybody was nervous. What am I going to do? Oh my Lord, it's coming so quickly. And once again, the government kicks it down. It's been pushed out. So my suggestion would just, let's keep a close eye on it. Do I think that it's important? We're going to have to alter the way that we do business? Of course we are. I mean, there's no question about it. But do we know everything that's going to entail? Do we know every loophole that's going to be taken away? No, we don't. The DOJ is back in there. They haven't finalized anything. It looks as it continues to progress that things are getting settled. But at the end of the day, we do not specifically know exactly what's going to happen. So all we can do is just prepare ourselves. But I wouldn't be surprised if they push it out even further, right? Because I don't think a lot of the settlement stuff is going to be done. And I wouldn't be surprised if it gets pushed out even further out. So again, until you're pressured to make a ton of changes, I wouldn't be overly concerned. The only big change I would be making, and that's what I'm telling a lot of the people I speak with, is start talking to your buyers with regards to what your worth is, what you are going to make on a transaction. Disclose how you're going to approach that. I would be doing that now in preparation that when that comes down, it's just part of your vernacular. It's not something that you're going to have to change. It's not something that you're going to have to get comfortable with, because right now you don't have to be comfortable with it, right? Because it's right there in the MLS what the other side's going to pay the seller. So that is still in there. But to get that vernacular down, get your work down, get your proposition down, get your listing appointment rhetoric down, now is a great time to be doing that. And then lastly, I had an agent basically say to me, hey, how do we move this inventory? We have, in some parts of the country, we have a lot of inventory. 4 months of inventory is a lot of inventory, especially when we were at possibly 2 weeks at some point, right? When we were in the pandemic, it was crazy. There was no inventory. So now that we have 4 months down here in Austin, Texas, for an example, how do we move this inventory? And the big thing I want to stress is we as agents and we as professionals in the real estate industry, we need to focus on a client's why. It is not about us, right? So often we get pigeonholed into, well, man, I'm not busy. I need to do some more social media advertising. I need to do postcards. I need to tell people about who I am, why I'm so important. But at the end of the day, Realtor.com just put out a thing. They asked everybody, what are the top 2 reasons why homeowners plan to move? Number one, 24.4% was to make a profit. And obviously, I think that makes a lot of sense. Real estate has been something that's been wonderful to so many people. It's created so much wealth, so I'm not surprised by that. Number two, 23.7% was for family reasons. And that happens all the time. Having a baby, increased family, you get married, you're not single anymore, you move to a different part, all those things. But at the end of the day, what it leaves is about 51.9% other reasons of why people do it. And my point is this: real estate, buying and selling, it's an emotional. It's very often emotional. It's far and few between that you get somebody that's extremely analytical. It's all about numbers, unless you're dealing with investors, of course. And they're good investors, because investors can sometimes get emotionally attached to houses and make bad moves. But my point is, it's typically an emotional decision. So we need to dig in to why people need to move. And instead of having advertising that's all about, hey, the nice shiny house and look at how pretty it is and all the pictures and the videos and all that, what we need to do is start doing more strategic, more in-depth advertising. And I threw out some examples, and I'll give a couple here, right? You're going to be able to read it. But target areas that appreciated most during the pandemic, and inform those homeowners in that specific area with how much they can potentially profit from selling their house, right? The number one reason is making money. So let's talk about making money. Number two, talk about a home's layout, how it's perfect for a growing family, a 4 to 5 person family. Talk about how conducive that layout is, how beautiful it is to walk around, all the beautiful bedrooms. Maybe each bedroom has bathrooms, right? I think that would be fantastic. Number three, advertise the ability of a home to host family and friends. Number four would be talk about entertaining, talk about graduation parties, how cool the vibe is at the house, right? You're not selling necessarily pictures and all that. You're talking about specific things that people do based on emotion in that house. That's where we want to change our focus. Talk about the projected value of a home in 3, 5, and 10 years. Go off of data prior to the pandemic and educate clients how that's going to change for them. Talk about show mortgage payments with buy downs. Talk about when rates lower down to 5%, 6%, right? What does that mean to the affordability of that house? Talk about the possibility of rents in that area for specific zip codes. Talk about the needs versus wants. Develop that in your presentation so that you know exactly what your client is going to be looking for. Show the math of house hacking. What if you were to buy a house and have a roommate or two, right? To get this younger generation off the fence of, hey, I'm just renting, it's just me. But what they're missing is, and my last point was, show the math on not buying. What are you losing by potential appreciation and claiming that house as your primary, and then after 2 years, you don't have to pay any capital gains? That's money right in your pocket. This younger generation seems to be missing that gap. I get it's an affordability thing, but we need to start talking to people about the math of home ownership and how it creates wealth. It's the number one reason. The other ones were clearly based around family, and by determining wants versus needs, you're going to learn a little bit more about your client and what they're specifically looking for when they buy or sell, and you're going to cater to that. All right, everybody, have a great week. I know it was a little bit noisy. I'm sitting down here in downtown, but I apologize coming to you late once again. I'm going to try and do better is all I can say, but you have any questions, you have any ideas you want to bounce off me, you want to grab a coffee and brainstorm of how to get a little bit busier, how to create more conversations, I am here and I am down, and I'll buy that coffee. All right, everybody, have a great week. Happy selling out there. Talk to you soon. Cheers.